Yo, so can you just buy cheap shinies and grind money all day instead of shiny hunting? Curious why hunting is the best method for shiny collection. Great question. So no, because or yes but no. What's the meme? You can't fudge an OT shiny. So that is something you'll notice really heavily within the PokeMMO community, Miller, is that people value OT shinies above all else because it means that you spent the time to earn it. If there are some people who do this. There are some people who just spend their days collecting Pokeyen and then buying shinies off the GTL. If you want to do that, that is totally fine. That's a totally awesome and valid way to collect shinies. However, if you bought your shiny Mudkip versus you compare your shiny Mudkip to someone who hunted it and has the OT Mudkip, it is inherently less valuable. That sounds really harsh and elitist and mean, but I'll explain what I mean by that. So what I mean by inherently less valuable is that humans generally value by effort in time, right? It's these two factors: effort put in and time, and usually like Pokeyen spent or something. To buy a shiny Mudkip, all you have to do is, let's do the math. A Mudkip probably costs like 60 mil on the GTL, I would guess. Mudkip. Let's see if there's one. There's not. Marstomp, Swampert? Swampert. Okay, well, this is super overpriced. Well, it's 5 times 31. I'd say 60 mil. You're usually gonna find a Swampert for like 60 to 80, let's say, on the GTL. So let's do 75. So 75 mil, let's say, it takes you to buy a Swampert, right? Or shiny Mudkip, right? So let's take that number and divide that by 300k, and that's the amount of Pokeyen you'll get per gym run, and that's the amount of hours it'll take you. So 250 hours of gym runs and 250 hours of money making. You could do this a lot faster if you also do like breeding for profit. Breeding for profit and flipping would make this like 200 hours. So let's say somewhere between 200 and 250 hours, right? To get a shiny, to buy a shiny Mudkip. All right, not bad. You know, that's doable. Now, how long would it take to breed for a shiny Mudkip, right? I don't really agree with that philosophy. It's as valuable to you as the time you're willing to spend. At the end of the day, it's value. Yeah, so if something, that's the whole point, right, Nikimi? It's like an objective philosophy that we all agree on, right? So if you put in more time to get something, it is objectively more valuable, right? Like that's a general rule we all have to agree on. Like that's like function in society. Now, what I always tell people is if you spend 1,000 hours to weave the perfect basket and someone spends 1,000 hours to become a doctor, those two things are equally valuable, or can be. Now, if that, which sounds crazy, but that should thus be the case, right? If someone really cares about being a basket weaver, even though like you could argue being a doctor obviously provides more use to the world, you could also argue that basket provides much happiness to that person, and like very extreme basket collectors, right? Like, it doesn't have to be on a functional or practical level. Yo, Jose, I appreciate that. But anyways, let's say it takes you 200, 250 hours to, thank you so much for the fucking Twitch Prime, man. I really appreciate that, dude. I'm doing okay. 200, 250 hours to go for a shiny Mudkip, to buy a shiny Mudkip, right? Now, let's say you wanted to actually hunt an OT shiny Mudkip. All right, first things first, you need 120 mil on average. Let's go ahead and do that. So you need 120 mil. Divided by, so we're already at more time, right? We're already at more time just with the Pokeyen. So already you're at double the time it takes to get an OT Mudkip alongside versus buying one, right? So now let's actually calculate the time it takes to do it, right? Price of lore, you would not lore for a Mudkip. You would egg hunt it. So now let's go ahead and do the let's try to do the math. Now the math here gets complicated because it's really tough to what's it called? And some people don't care about that stuff, so it's fine. Nikimi, it is like, this is an objective philosophy rule that, like, for most humans, that time and effort equal value, right? We can view objective value and personal value as two different things, but that just gets too ridiculous, right? From my understanding, like someone can value a stick of deodorant as the most valuable thing in the world. That's always going to be the case, but it becomes vapid or void to like argue around that because it's just unlikely. and it's not really important for this analogy, right? Value, when we talk about value in relation to society, we generally talk about time plus effort. That's the important thing to factor in. Time plus effort. Like, sentimental value is an external factor that is going to be different per person, and we can't calculate that because it just gets insane. It becomes, you can't calculate it, right? So it becomes, the whole discussion becomes pointless. You have to ground some beliefs to have a discussion. Okay, this is becoming way too philosophical and cringe. I mean, I love philosophy, but I know it's boring to a lot of people. You're at 400 hours. Now let's think about, okay, you have to spend 6 hours hatching every 400 eggs, let's say, 360 eggs. So let's do 400 times 6. So now we're at 450, we're at 850 hours, right? So we're at 850 hours, and that's 75, so plus 75 hours, because the amount of the 1 hours of actually making the eggs. Okay, so now we're at, isn't value dictated by utility towards well-being? It can be. I'm setting up a perimeter. It can be, for sure. I'm setting up a framework. Okay, I try to skip over this. Value can literally mean whatever it wants to you, right? But I try to set up a framework because you have to work within the same framework for things to make sense and to have a conversation. Value could be the amount of fucking liquid something can hold, right? So you could argue a cup has more value than human hands because it holds more. Like, you could do anything, but the point is, generally, people value as something. You have to set a framework. So generally, something has to be time and effort. Okay. Anyways, so to buy a mudkip, once again, to buy a mudkip, it's only 200 hours, right? We're already at 925 hours, and that's not even considering finding like ditto boxes and stuff. I'm not gonna, that's a way harder thing to calculate because it's really tough to, it's just like a very variable thing, but hopefully you get my point. I have another video breaking this down called the Dratini equation, which breaks it down in a lot more succinct fashion since I'm doing this live on stream. It's just the dismissive attitude some people give to people who buy. I agree. Oh, dude, I actually, no, Nikimi, I super agree with this. I think it's really elitist and really rude when people like, I hate that every time someone links a shiny in global chat, people type, oh, not OT release. I think it's kind of funny, kind of like, sometimes it's like actually kind of rude. If people want to shunt non-OT shinies or collect non-OT shinies, I think that's fucking awesome, and I encourage the hell out of it. Now, is that, are those people's shinies worth like the same as someone who worked harder for it? Like that, I don't think that's fair, right? Like, I don't think it's fair. It's unfair to someone who worked for an OT shiny mudkip to say like, oh yeah, like my mudkip is like worth, you know, less or equal as yours that you bought. That's fucked up. But you shouldn't gloat about it. You shouldn't say, oh, mine is worth. And if that person finds it equally valuable to them because they bought it, that's fine. But in terms of, there is self-value, and then there is like societal value, which is hilarious to, like, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? There's two different values. It's the same way that there is self-responsibility and then societal responsibility, and people often conflate these two things when having discussions. It's the same way, like, you'll often notice people with the best mentalities, I've noticed this in my life for sure, people with the best mentalities are really hard on themselves while also being really forgiving and lax on others. And that's a huge difference of self-responsibility while maintaining a different set of rules for societal responsibility. If that makes sense. It's like not holding other people to the same standard that you hold yourself to. Okay. But I super agree with you, Nikimi. Someone had to hunt it for that other person to own it at the end of the day. Well, no. But that person's not exerting, just because, no. But that's a false correlation, right, Nikimi? Because that person's not putting out that same value. Once again, like I want to encourage people to shiny hunt however they want. I don't want people to be unfair to OT hunters. Now we're so far from that reality, so I get it. Like right now, it's like a pendulum swing thing, right? Right now, the pendulum is super to like one side where it's like, okay, non-OT shiny hunters are like super laughed at and like disrespected, and it's not fair, and it's, you know, it's mean, right? But I don't want the pendulum to swing in the other direction too far to where it's like, oh yeah, like their 2 shinies are like equally as valuable. Like that's super unfair, and super weird to do, because like, yeah, packing a college lecture, this did literally become a like, unironically became a philosophical lecture on value, which is a really, I mean, it's kind of interesting, like it's funny. I see it this way. So you want to sort of something to put in the time. Yeah, I really appreciate your point of view, Nikimi. I think it can get interesting. Hopefully it's not too boring for too many people, but I understand. So you want to sort or something to put in the time and effort to learn how to make it, and you put, yeah, that's, yeah, put in the same time like more than if you bought it. Yes, absolutely. Like there's a lot of meaning and like pride and like work that goes into that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Nikimi, I fucking hate, what happens is I hate that when someone buys a non-OT shiny, people look at that shiny and think that it has no value. That's the issue right now, right? Like I think if someone collects non-OT shinies, OT hunters scoff at them and look at that as like, oh, it has 0 value. And like that's not true. Like that's not fair. Like it can be like, it can be less valuable than like your quote unquote shinies, but still be valuable to them and still be a really fucking cool thing to achieve and still be really awesome. It's the same way, like, for example, like, oh, just because I have like fucking shiny Shuckle, and I even got lucky on it, right? But like, just because I have shiny Shuckle doesn't mean like anytime someone gets like a ×5 Horde shiny, I scoff at them and I'm like, huh, really? Like, release it, like not a rare shiny? And it's like, dude, okay, like you can still like, it's just, yeah, like it's like that. Like every time someone gets a shiny in PokeMMO, it's fucking impressive, right? Like if someone gets a ×5 Horde shiny, like that's a really interesting, so this is an interesting thing as well, Mikimi. People value, I think that people value ×5 Horde shinies more than what's it called? ×5 Horde shinies more than like a non-OT shiny Mudkip, which is probably not fair, or definitely not fair. Because if a non-OT shiny Mudkip takes you 200 hours versus a ×5 will take you 30 on average, that's not fair. That one's valued just because it's OT. I agree there's a lot of inconsistencies in the current community with non-OT shiny hunting, which is super unfair. I do think it is important to like be realistic about it and be like, okay, like it is, they are objectively not as valuable, with the framework being like time and effort, which is what most people put into like value, but it's interesting. I love that we have philosophical discussion about a color palette swap monster in a digital game show based in real. Play how you want, absolutely. Yeah, I always encourage that sort of play. Like that's, I like that analogy or that example a lot, JW Tree. I always tell people, and like playing pretty much any MMO is always a balance of efficiency and fun. If you want to be like most hyper efficient, like catching your breeders isn't the way to do it. But if you want to have the fucking most fun, doing a mix is usually for a lot of people like really fun, right? I do that as well. I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, like, I am definitely not a peak efficient player. But also, man, this happened in the RuneScape community. If you come from the RuneScape community, you'll know this. You shouldn't. It's really tough because the pendulum can just swing so fast. What happened in the RuneScape community was that casual players started scoffing at efficient players. What happened was efficient players who just enjoyed playing the game efficiently, who like wouldn't demean others for playing inefficiently, like they just enjoyed it that way, people would scoff at them, and like it almost became this like people strawmanned the fuck out of the efficient community. I had never seen a high level player like belittle someone else for doing an inefficient method. As someone who was in the high level community, quote unquote, I was literally I did infernal eel fishing, which if you don't know is like 30,000 experience per hour compared to like EHP, which was like the efficient rate to do it at was like 110 or 120k. Like what happened was like you'll see essentially like in PokeMMO, sometimes you'll see elite players scoff at casual players, and that's not cool. But then in RuneScape, you had casual players scoffing at elite players for like playing the way they wanted to, and it's really funny how fast the pendulum can swing and how easy it is for like us to fall into these traps. Yo, Chimeri, what's up, gamer? Welcome, welcome. Good on you, man, for doing the workout. More power to you. Yeah, fuck that. The true duality of gamers: efficient player to casual, get good. Casual to efficient player, touch grass. Yeah. You need to see that clip out of context? I'm scared. I don't even know what it could be. What did I say? Anytime someone gets like a ×5 Horde shiny, I scoff at them and I'm like, really? Like, release it, like not a rare shiny. Okay, that was pretty good. True. That's exactly how I act. True and real. Pat Meta scoffing at scoffers. That's really fucking good out of context. Wow. That's a good one. That's a good one.